it has to do with myself being on a spiritual healing path for me has allowed me to hold a space for others to heal. If we don't have these experiences of needing to be healed, then it's really hard to understand what it means if someone's suffering on an emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual level. And so it's sort of like the cauldron of life, the tempering of the steel, as they say, that we each get to go through in our own way to become prepared to serve in the way that we're meant to serve. And so if we're talking about the shadow, sometimes those types of experiences feel very hard and very challenging and can lead to certain levels of despair or, disappointment or perhaps depression. Now, if we're able to embrace the shadow and to look at it from a slightly different angle, we can see that that's the tempering heat that causes our soul to aspire and that causes us to awaken more and to claim our own power and to really find that source connection within as the primary center from which we operate. And truly, that is the teaching of all the great religions, of all the direct spiritual paths, is to latch onto that spirit within as your primary relationship. And from that, I believe, whatever you want to call that, you might call it God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, the universe, life, source, nature. My belief is that that essence of life itself really doesn't mind what you call it. It just really wishes for you to call it something and to call upon it and to feel and to recognize more and more you're at one-ment with it. And so the atonement or the at-one-ment is for us to realize that deep source connection. And from that place of connection, I believe, is where all true healing comes.
And in order to find or to maintain these connections, I also see that our daily little choices are important. And one of those important choices is food.
Very, very true.
And it's why I so appreciate so much that raw food or living food is an important aspect of your big body of work. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, speaking of my own personal healing, the raw foods arena is one area that really helped me a lot. I had been suffering, like many of us, with an overeating addiction, with having been kind of cracked out on sucrose, so to speak, as a child, and be kind of always grabbing for the cakes and the pastries and things like that in a compulsive way that I was not in control of. And that harkened back to my lineage and histories of alcoholism and overeating from my family members as well, that I picked up on that habit and I was unable to overcome it until I went to raw foods. And so finally, in my 30s, I discovered that there was such a thing as a raw foods movement. I hadn't even known. And so pretty much overnight, when I got tired enough of feeling bad, I had found Giuliano's book and I had found the Essene Gospels of Peace, and I was kind of like, I guess if I ever get sick enough, I'll go raw, I didn't have the common sense to say at that time, well, let me just do this now because, it's better to nip it in the bud. Nevertheless, I got the experience of having headaches for 4 and 5 days, of being hypoglycemic, of being overweight, of having my adrenals really low. And so therefore I had the experience of going raw and transforming that within 3 to 6 months. And so I knew from my own example of my own life that it was helping people. So this was in Richmond, Virginia, about 9 years ago now. And what I began to do was prepare foods for others, and they liked it. And so then I began, as a natural teacher, I tend to be a teacher, so I started teaching that for others and started building community around raw foods in Richmond, Virginia. And now my friend Rob Murphy, who had suffered with the triple bypass and turned his life around and is looking younger every day, he's now in charge of the raw foods meetup group that I started in Richmond, Virginia, and there's about maybe 300 people in that group now. So when I go back to Richmond, I love to connect with the raw foods community there and sometimes teach classes. And also, as I was one of the producers for the 2007 Raw Spirit Festival. I helped that leap from the 200 to the 2,200 person level in that year, and learned a lot about the raw foods movement and met most of the companies early on involved with the movement. From that connection, since subsequently after I left the festival, I was able to do something called Best of Raw, which is a celebration, I call it, online and offline events celebrating and honoring key leaders of the raw foods movement. And so we have an annual awards celebration. Last year it had 28 categories of different things about the raw, like whether you're, favorite raw chef, favorite raw educator, sexiest raw man, sexiest raw woman, we have a little fun with it, like that. 28 categories, and people vote. And so last year in 2009, 6,700 people voted. And this was with me just doing the back end all by myself, So it clearly has a dharma of its own. So I've been following that. Recently, we've been doing the Truly Raw Cacao Recipe Contest to call attention to the standards needed in the raw foods movement, and to also have a lot of fun with the chocolate and the Truly Raw chocolate from Bali. And in addition, I've started holding a container for the emergence of the Raw Vegan Trade Association. So these are some of the main projects in raw foods that I've been working with, because at this time raw foods is truly an industry all unto itself. And because I've been lucky enough to meet most of the leaders of the movement and also many of the businesses involved, I'm in a position to hold a space for the emergence of this organization, calling upon the larger intelligence of this community to put forth some standards and other, certifications and things like that, so that we can really be professional in the public eye on all the store shelves at this time. So that's in the works right now.